It sounds so clean. It's insane. Like, imagine how much you can do with this. It's crazy.
This software allows you to track.
Tokyo Station, November 4th, 1921. Hana Takashi is a symbol of the New Japan. Born into a minor samurai family, as a young man he'd converted to Catholicism and opted to be classed as a
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right. Oh God. Okay. How's everyone doing? Everyone doing well? Everyone doing well? Yes. Let me see who we have here. I know we got Alt Diego Brando, though I know it's a different name. Welcome, Diego. Glad to see you here, Diego. Uh, Doug on the left. Hello, Doug on the left. Hey, Doug on the left. Very quickly becoming, if not already, a regular. Hello, Doug on the left. Pizza, pizza, pizza. Love pizza. Pizza also regular now. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, Pete. So yesterday was oof. Yesterday was definitely a big old oof. Um, Fallout from the Charlie Kirk such things and stuff. If that's what you're referring to, there was a lot of oof going on. Let's put it that way. Um, Alan, hello, Alan. Steve Bannon. If you combine MAGA and Maha, it's like 1932. You'll govern forever. MTG 100%. Is that a direct quote, Alan? That's pretty horrific. I mean, I'm not surprised. Steve Bannon being a monster. MTG being kind of a monster. Okay, yeah. So, Lee Lane, good morning, Lee Lane. Welcome, welcome. Good morning. Oh, geez, Alan. Okay, yeah, that is a direct quote. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. They're just saying it, right? They're just saying it. They're just outright saying it. They're openly just saying it. Okay, good. Love that. Love that for all of us. The fascists. Love it. Okay. Good morning, folks. It is Saturday. Yay, Saturday. So I have some cream of wheat. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of cream of wheat before. Good morning, Winterlinde. Good morning. Cream of wheat is like kind of it's just kind of like mush. It's like mush derived from wheat, but I'm eating some of that because I'm disgusting. Well, you're right. It's cream. You're right, pizza cream. Well, Fox had a host call for involuntary lethal injections. Are you serious, Doug? I need to look that up. And put it on, and maybe we'll watch it if it's a clip. If there's a clip of that somewhere, that's pretty horrific too. Uh, Lee Lane, I loved cream of wheat when I was a kid. I know, Lee Lane, me too. And I just never stopped. Thank you, Doug, on the left. I'll take a look at that. Maybe we'll do that now, actually. I'm very curious of it. Actually, I might wait to watch it later. We'll watch it on the second stream. But thank you for putting it in the Discord, because that would be a great thing to watch later. Diego says, like, why are they protecting Preds? You know what, Diego? I don't know. I have said recently, like, QAnon is an insane conspiratorial ideology. But geez, it's kind of like recently it's been like, I can see where they got the idea from, because it seems like our government is full of pedophiles. Seems like the whole country is full of pedophiles at the moment. So, yeah, okay. And it's kind of it's disgusting. It's disgusting, okay? So, and they haven't even released the Jeffrey Epstein files yet. It is a mess, okay? Thank you, Doug, on the left, also for putting that in the Discord. Okay, so, Robert McGarry, hello, Robert McGarry. Welcome, Robert McGarry. Robert McGarry, Lee Lane, and I think who was anyone else in here was involved in this. We had a great long conversation yesterday on Discord in the chat. Luke was there also. Hello, Luke. Okay, Luke was also in the our lovely Discord conversation yesterday, folks. And if you want to, we've now started having sort of debates and voice debates and voice conversations in the Discord. At the top of the chat is I pinned a link so to our Discord. Right, Marcus. I know we're gonna be watching a video about Japanese imperialism. Or Japanese militarism, from one of my favorite channels here. And as you all know, well, sorry, let me take a step back. My ADHD is kicking in here. I understand. I understand. You don't have to, Diego. You don't have to join the Discord. I get it. You have trauma there. I will say though, our Discord is very, very friendly. Like one of the literally, I'm not just saying this. Probably, and I'm sure Lee Lane, probably some other folks here, Luke and such, can Robert can also back this up. It's like one of the most civil and like friendly Discord servers I've ever been on. If you General Tojo, absolutely. Doug on the left, absolutely. Okay, the monster himself. So what we're gonna do, folks. So at the top of the page, if you want to join our Discord, there's at the top of the chat, I pinned a link. You can click on it. You'll join our Discord. We have like I think 112 people in there. It's growing very fast. Also, if you do join the Discord, if you do join the Discord, um, we will you can put in recommendations for things for me to react to on stream, and so there's that. Also, if you want to help support me, um, for those folks who don't know, I'm trying to be able to do this full time, and right now I'm not quite hitting that point where I can, but any support you can give is very appreciated. um, I yes, Doug on the left. Thank you, Lee Lane. Yeah, very wonderfully supportive community. London, as London says here, Diego, if you find someone who breaks the rules, send them to me and my autocratic will break them. Yes, London being our autocratic ruler over on Discord, who will swiftly crack down on anyone who breaks any of the rules. And we've already, as London will attest to, he has already cracked down a few times. So, okay. So if you want to, thank you. Yes, Pizza, please like the stream. So folks, if you want to donate to me, I greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to be able to sustain myself to do this full time. I love doing this. Okay. We have at the top of the page, again, if you click on the pinned chat, the pinned link, there is a link to buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee, or just donate to me generally. We have one super chat. If we get one super chat, I'll put on the Jester hat. Okay. I'm almost to 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. I've been doing this for about a month, a little bit over a month. So it's growing quickly, but alas, YouTube makes it hard to sort of survive off of it. But anyway, regardless, so there's that. Please like the stream. And okay, so what we're gonna do, folks, as you know, in hey Diego, that is okay. You're right. We do London. We do. I haven't been doing much when it comes to posting new videos because I've been focusing on the live streams. But hopefully, we'll talk about this, London. Maybe figure out how to I don't know, figure out how to get some more good videos up there. Okay, so what we're gonna do, folks, on these morning streams, I will stream, of course, later in the day. Also, these morning streams, I'm going to be working while we are talking and doing some things. In the afternoon streams, um, um, oh, Michael, absolutely, we do. I will say, uh, uh, Michael, I believe in three strikes out, you're out rule, which warnings are given by mods. And Michael, London does that. We've only ever had to boot one person, so it's been great so far. Yeah. London is even though he's an autocratic ruler, he is a merciful autocratic ruler. Okay, so anyway, okay, so folks, let's get started. What I want us to do. Good afternoon, Mithro. Good afternoon. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be working on. Yes, a benevolent dictator, right? Luke, an enlightened monarch is London. Okay, hail to the autocratic ruler. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of be working on creating my presentation for later in the day because you all know I do. I do. I do like official lessons at the beginning in my afternoon streams. I actually do official lessons and discussions. And for those who have been here for a while, um, um, don't you dare usurp my authority, London. Okay, I'm just kidding. Okay, we will be uh, so I do like official lessons in the afternoon. When this morning I'll be eating my cream of wheat here, having a nice little breakfast. And then in the afternoon, we'll do the official lessons. And for those who have been here for a while, you know that every 2 weeks, at least starting now, every 2 weeks, we do like a Kahoot where there's kind of a quiz on it. Okay. Good morning, Fox Emblem. Good morning. Yeah, folks, we're still not sure. That's a good point, Fox Emblem. Fox Emblem says more and more is being disproved on the Kirk shooter being a lefty or left-leaning. It's looking more and more likely he was a groper. Also good, groper. Well, what's the difference? Also, good morning, y'all. Good morning, Fox Emblem. We still don't know, folks. From my perspective, Fox Emblem, and to me, it appears he was a lefty, but we don't know. There's more and more coming out from both sides. There's a lot of crap on Twitter that's kind of adding to the confusion. We don't know, but yeah, we don't know, Fox Emblem, but fair point. Okay. All right, guys. So, what we're going to do is I have a video here I want to watch with all of you. So I'm going to pull that up. This is, so I don't know if anyone ever has watched Extra History before. Extra History is a fantastic channel. Um, um, that's fair, Fox Emblem. I did see that Nick Fuentes was panicking, which always brings me great joy when you have a Nazi panicking. But we're not sure, and that's very possible. Fox Emblem, it's very possible. Okay, we just don't know. Okay, so all right, so this is a video here on Japanese militarism. Now, we have done a live stream before on sort of the rise of Imperial Japan and all the horrific crimes. Yeah, I love it, Diego. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. I used to show some of these videos to my classes. So this is about Japanese militarism. We talked about Imperial Japan, and there is debates amongst a lot of historians about whether the government of Imperial Japan was fascist or not. I err on the side of yes, they were. Others disagree. But this is sort of a video talking about the history of the lead up to the sort of authoritarian regime that took place in Japan right before World War II and during World War II. So let's we're gonna watch it, and you guys can kind of decide for yourselves. I love extra history. It's animated. It's great. They do very good research. So let's watch it together. Please, while I'm working on stuff, I will be keeping an eye on the live chat. So please talk, do what you'd like. Okay. All right. So let's watch this. No, you're right, Fox. Definitely statistically. Oh, absolutely, Marcus. Sorry, I'm my ADHD. So, Fox Emblem, yes, you're right. Statistically, it's more likely to be a right winger. I can't even argue with that. Okay. So, all right. Okay, Marcus. The crimes of Imperial Japan are compared to Nazi atrocities. I would argue they were worse. Marcus, you are speaking my language. I did a live stream on the rape of Nanking, or I shouldn't even use that word, the RAPE of Nanking and Unit 731 and the horrific crimes of Imperial Japan. Yeah, Robert, the China incident, I mean, horrific crimes. Right. Absolutely, London. The maps of Imperial Japan, of Japan is it's nuts. Okay, so what we're gonna do? Let's watch this. Okay, you guys can kind of think for yourselves about whether you would classify it as fascist. Also, just super interesting, the politics and the violence and things like that. So let's get into it. Hello,
Tokyo Station, November 4th, 1921. Hara Takashi is a symbol of the New Japan. Born into a minor samurai family, as a young man he'd converted to Catholicism and opted to be classed as a commoner. Then, after a long career in public service, he became the first commoner and first Christian to become Prime Minister of Japan. During his tenure, Japan had finally stepped into a role among the world nations. He'd seen his country through the Paris Peace Conference, joined the League of Nations, intervened in the Russian Civil War, and built bridges with the business community. And though a conservative, he'd also discussed loosening Japan's harsh colonial rule in Korea. But all this gained him enemies. Enemies like the train station switchman, walking up to him now through the crowd. An ultra-nationalist angry at his moderation and international policy. Hara seized the knife, yet none of his achievements can save him. But before we continue, thank you so much to NordVPN for helping to make today's historical tale possible. Popular culture tends to pay a lot of attention to the rise of fascism in Europe, particularly the Nazis, but less so on the growth and development of militarism in Japan. When it is examined, militarism is generally looked at from the perspective of the United States, China, or the UK. And there's a lot of talk about the need for oil and rubber, but not a lot about the domestic issues.
This is very true. A lot of teachers I've known have only talked about the economic issues, and they don't typically focus on Japanese society or anything like that, which is very much important for understanding what happened.
Which is unfortunate, since the story of Japan's capture by a military faction and march toward the Second World War is worth studying. Because unlike in German fascism, the Japanese militarists never managed to create a fully totalitarian state. In fact, until the end of the war, there were still political parties and opposition figures, though they were mostly terrified into silence, and the militarists were never able to take over the economy. But Japan
Oh, Doug, I would love to see that sometime. I would love to see that sometime. Right, bro. Moment. Totally. I totally agree. I am 100% supporting you here, bro. Moment. I, as a historian, think it was absolutely fascist. There are a lot of historians who disagree, though. Weirdly enough, I think they're being purists. I don't think you need pure totalitarianism for it to be fascist. But I think the extra history guy does agree that it's fascist. Pizza, yeah, I feel like even if he was a leftist shooting, it's still the fault of the. Oh, absolutely, totally agree. Robert McGarry, love it. Speaking of history, the fall of civilization, Jean-Paul. I love that channel, Robert. Oh, I know, right, Luke? Very weird. And Luke says it's weird that a Nazi stood up for the Chinese. Yeah. As I said in that one live stream, there was a famous Nazi who actually sheltered a bunch of Chinese folks to protect them from the Japanese onslaught, which really goes to show you the how horrific the Japanese were being, that even this Nazi was like, okay, this is a bit much. I'm going to protect these people.
His newly authoritarian government still had enough power over the state to plunge it into utter devastation, into a war with no clear strategy or objective, and without the consent of its civilian leadership. Now, before we dive in further, an interesting side note for those interested. This series will function as a sort of sequel to our End of the Samurai series, plus our Sun Yat-sen series deals with many of the same issues from the Chinese perspective, and is governed by a council of elders. More crossovers than the MCU, though it's, been around longer. Anyway, let's get started just after the Satsuma Rebellion. The Meiji Emperor has been restored to real power, the samurai and class system has been abolished, and Japan is governed by a council of elder statesmen in a period known as the Meiji oligarchy. But here's the thing about the Meiji state. It has no real political ideology other than one: advancement. Every step they take is geared toward modernizing the country, because they want parity with the powerful Western nations that they fear could colonize Japan like they have Southeast Asia, or carve it up like China. Their only chance, they felt, was to join those modernized nations and deal with them on equal footing, rallying behind the cry, enrich the country, strengthen the military.
On a side note, folks, a lot of these Japanese leaders believe that they need to mimic the European colonial powers. Okay, so you have to think about it. This is Japan. They're like, hey, look at what all the Europeans are doing. We need to modernize like they are. We need to have a colonial empire. We need to do massive conquests and militarize and things like that. That's sort of a side note.
In just a few decades of hyper-fast development, they tackled industrialization, railroad building, innovative factories, compulsory public education, transition to a modern economy, and the founding of corporate combines. Dang, that's a lot. And that's just the short list. And of course, they poured money into creating a modernized army and a modernized fleet. The Meiji oligarchs also courted Western powers diplomatically, arguing that based on their rapid modernization and partial Westernization, they should renegotiate their unequal treaties foisted on the previous shogunate government, an effort that was ultimately successful. And some of these movements were beneficial for the populace. Japan was in the middle of a population explosion, especially in agricultural areas, and these expanded opportunities created jobs for children that wouldn't inherit farms. The reforms also gave a louder and louder voice to the common people and groups who had been advocating democracy and constitutional rule from the early days of the Restoration.
Oops, 1 second here.
And by 1881, the calls for a constitution could not be ignored. So the Meiji oligarchy went shopping in Europe for a system of government that would placate the reformers. The resulting Meiji Constitution of 1889 was a hybrid of the more absolutist Prussian constitution with the parliamentary element.
Yeah, they actually borrowed it from Prussia, the structure of their government.
Of British and American models. The emperor would nominally be head of state, with an elected diet containing an upper and lower house. There were independent courts, a privy council for the emperor, and a nice advisory position for former statesmen to steer the emperor on policy. There were guaranteed rights of freedom of religion, trial before a judge, due process, and the right to petition the government. Not to mention, there were qualified rights like freedom of speech, freedom of movement, right to assemble and to associate with anyone, as well as the right to private correspondence and protections against unreasonable search. Sounds great, right? Well, this constitution also had problems. In fact, it was built to have problems. You see, all those qualified rights were conditional. Essentially meaning the government could take them away at any time if they deemed it necessary for security. Oh, and those former statesmen who would advise the emperor? Yeah, they were the oligarchs. And while the Diet controlled legislation and budgets, and the prime minister ran the state, The constitution essentially made the emperor an absolute monarch. He could appoint peers and dismiss the House of Representatives. All branches of government, it said, were united in the emperor. His power came not from the people, but from an unbroken line of succession from the divine sun goddess, Amaterasu, and the nation of Japan.
There was even a belief, folks, about the emperor that the sun god, Amaterasu, would come down and actually engage in coital acts, coitus with the emperor, which would create sort of the next member of the imperial line.
And was not a government, but a family state, with the emperor at its head. This political philosophy, known as kokutai, or national body, was assumed to be ancient and innate to Japanese culture. The idea argued by the largely conservative politicians who wrote this constitution was that political systems might come and go, but this sense of national unity with the emperor at the top was eternal. It's also an idea they started to push via the new public education system.
I'm sorry, Marcus, you're right. Amaterasu, yeah. Yes, Macy, you're right. Kind of built to have problems, right?
As well as the military, which regularly drafted large numbers of young men. The result was that by the end of World War I, much of society accepted this idea of the emperor's central and divine role, even though this supposedly ancient philosophy was about a century old. It was a constitution meant to give the appearance of democracy, but with exploits the oligarchs and the emperor could use if things got too democratic.
We see a similarity there. Our Constitution also had built-in protections against too much democracy. James Madison famously said that the purpose of the Senate is to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. So that would be like protecting the wealthy from the everyone else. Okay, so a lot of so-called democratic governments have built-in mechanisms to prevent too much democracy. The Electoral College is another example of this.
And the biggest exploit was this. The military was an independent branch, answerable to the emperor alone. It had no civilian control and could act independently in matters of war and peace. In the next few decades, the military would flex its muscle. In 1895, it defeated China in the First Sino-Japanese War. In 1905, it crushed the Russian fleet in the Russo-Japanese War, becoming the first Asian nation to defeat a European empire, and in emulation of the great powers it intended to join, it scooped up colonial possessions in Taiwan, Korea, and Manchuria, a strategically crucial area meant to guard Japan against threats from both China and Russia. Japan also emerged as a major winner after World War I. They walked out of the Paris Peace Conference running a German possession in China, Shandong, as well as a mandate to govern former German colonies in the Western Pacific. The wishes of the Meiji state had essentially been fulfilled, but not all was well. When the Meiji emperor died in 1912 and the country transitioned to his successor, Emperor Taisho, the military had demonstrated its power by forcing a constitutional crisis, refusing to send a member to the prime minister's cabinet, meaning it could not be formed. And as Western ideas and technology swept the country, and the big corporations, known as zaibatsu, became political kingmakers, there was widespread dissatisfaction.
Oh, who would have thought the corporations became kingmakers? That sounds familiar also, doesn't it?
With the government and increasing radicalization, especially as the rice riots swept the country in 1918. Political parties in the Diet became ever more polarized. On the left, socialists and communists wanted to solve the poverty of the countryside with collectivization. Democracy activists began to push for universal male suffrage and would ultimately succeed. Meanwhile, ultra-nationalists on the right increasingly looked at these leftists and moderates as enemies to be fought with assassination and violence. Yet, despite these tensions, there was optimism, especially in port cities like Yokohama, the most westernized Japanese city. There, with its hotels and dance halls, East and West mingled, and new political and social ideas gestated. It was a city of art, innovation, and fun, a center for liberal ideas. And if you were standing there on the dock in 1923, waving at a massive Western cruise ship leaving port, you couldn't imagine what was coming. Until a sound like thunder. Until the ground went out from under you, the pier falling into the sea, spilling people and vehicles into the harbor, until a 40-foot wall of water appeared on the horizon. The Great Kanto earthquake was about to remake Japan and signal a new era.
Okay, Chapter 2, the Taisho Democracy. Okay, let me check chat here before we get to the next chapter. You kind of see that's building up here. They go into great detail. That's why, okay, fascism shall see its end. Hello, Radon. Welcome, Radon. Okay. Um, and not Radon. I'm sorry. That is, I'm looking at a different one here. Okay, let's see what we got here. The timing is crazy, right? Cough, cough. Exactly. The Mongols defeated the Europeans before this. Yeah, you're right, Marcus. The Pope even sent a letter to Genghis Khan. Was like, hey, can you stop attacking us? Thank you. Okay. All right, guys. Let's continue here.
Yokohama, September 1st, 1923. A city of liberal ideas, like labor unions, women's rights, and democracy. A city that smells of foreign delights, like chocolate and cigars. A city about to be destroyed. The ground shakes for 14 seconds, and in that time, most of the Western concrete buildings collapse, crushing hundreds. And though most traditional buildings are wood, soon fire rages through the city. Dazed survivors stagger around, coated in white dust. But it's not over. A 40-foot tsunami smashes into the coast. Ships are washed down streets and deposited on roofs. Then another wave follows, and another. The sea drowns or sweeps away thousands. Within minutes, Yokohama lays in almost total ruin, and the destruction continues inland to a place only 17 miles from the port city, Tokyo. The destruction rages on. In Tokyo, a city still made largely of wood and rice paper, buildings ignite into district-wide infernos. Fire brigades try to respond, but the tremors have broken all the pipes. In an apocalyptic scene, residents evacuate to a clear area beside a river, but the city around them is a firestorm, and the rising heat combines with the high winds to create a fire whirl the size of a tornado. Of the 140,000 killed, this one freakish accident will account for around 40,000 of them. And for a certain segment of the Japanese right wing, this was divine retribution for Japan flirting with Western ideas, allowing socialists and anarchists to operate and sabotaging the military's achievements abroad.
That's called scapegoating. If anyone doesn't know, that's scapegoating, where you blame, a group that you don't like for something. Okay.
In Korea and China. In fact, in the aftermath of the earthquake, mobs hunted and murdered Koreans and anarchists in retribution for the destruction.
Yeah, London,
now, that might sound strange, but ultranationalist groups had been active in Japan for decades, including some who practiced paramilitary.
Yeah, so if I'm going to pause here, see, I turned London. I turned on followers only for Twitch chat, similar to YouTube subscriber only chat. Let me know if you want me to turn off. No, thank you, London. That works. Thank you. I suspect you're more talented at that than I am. Robert McGarry, was Japan in World War I? I'm new here. Yes, they were. Now they came in kind of near the end, and it was sort of they weren't like officially involved, but they ended up taking a bunch of German possessions in the Pacific. Pizza, right? Woo, wow, the rich people were only in it for the rich. The rich people were, I'm sorry, I just made the rich people were only in it for the rich people. Who could have predicted this outlandish outcome of events, right? Shocking, Pizza. Who would have thought? Macy, what's the difference between scapegoating and straw manning? So, Macy, scapegoating is where you blame a small group or a group in general for you assign guilt to a group. You basically put the blame for larger issues on a group when they shouldn't be there. Okay. Straw manning is where you, like if you're debating with someone and you debate against an argument that the other person didn't make. Okay. So like if we're talking about, let's say if we're debating like, the Epstein files, someone's like, they should release the Epstein files. And then like the other person goes, what about when the Democrats did this or that or this or that? Okay, that would be straw manning, where you kind of create another. You have another. You create a debate about something that you weren't debating. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay.
Or intelligence activities. Two of the most prominent, the Black Ocean Society and the Black Dragon Society, were especially concerned with countering the threat from neighboring.
By the way, badass names for these groups, okay?
Russia and China. A decade earlier, they had entertained a more pan-Asian view, encouraging and sheltering Sun Yat-sen in the 1911 Chinese Revolution,
right.
But they increasingly saw Japan not just as the natural leader of the Asian.
Okay, Macy, you're hilarious, Macy. Yes, so it's straw man to bring up gains when someone's talking about trans populations. Yes, Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. London World, another way to spread propaganda. LOL, coming up with cool last names. Right. Right. The group, by the way, that assassinated Franz Ferdinand, which began World War One, they were called the Black Hand. Now you got to tell me that's a pretty badass name.
Nations, but its colonial master. And those who believed that military expansion was the key to national and economic security were known as militarists. But in the early 1920s, they were an extreme fringe, and there was no ultranationalist or militarist party in the Diet. Between 1912 and 1927, Japan entered a period of reform known as the Taisho democracy, named after the ruling emperor. And part of that opening of society involved the rise of political parties. Now, there were a lot of parties, but we're going to focus on two today. The conservative Sayukai, or Association of Friends of Constitutional Government, and the liberal Kensekai, or Constitutional Politics Association. You actually met the Sayukai last episode. It was the party of Hara Takashi, the prime minister assassinated in a Tokyo train station. They claimed to be liberal, but were really more of a center-right bureaucratic party, believing in big government, large public spending, and opposing social reform programs. They also flirted with the militarist and ultranationalist right, positioning themselves as pro-military and largely in favor of colonialist projects. The Kensekai, by contrast, was a center-left party who backed labor unions, supported economic reforms for farmers, and stood against the rule of oligarchs. Their biggest policy proposal was universal male suffrage. But they'd also been kept out of power by oligarch machinations, prevented from forming a government even when they won the majority. And because the conservative Sayukai held the majority from 1900 until just after Hara's assassination in 1921, you'd think the ultranationalists would be happy. Well, not so much. For these men, the moderate conservatives were almost as despised as the leftists. See, before Hara, the prime minister was usually a retired general or admiral and extremely friendly to the military. Ultranationalists also hated how Japan had joined the League of Nations after World War I. They thought it was a policy that did nothing but restrain Japan from acting decisively and...
By the way, the USA had many instances where they refused to join international organizations or international treaties because they thought they were restraining
its own interest. They argued that Hara hadn't even gotten the Paris Peace Conference signatories to affirm a statement of racial equality among the members. The UK and US shot it down. For a period, the ultranationalists got excited at the prospect of the Siberian intervention, when Japan joined a multinational force attempting to stabilize the Russian Civil War. The army had hoped to keep Siberia, fashioning it into a buffer state against Russia. But Hara shot that plan down, and when he brought Japanese forces home, the military's perspective was that it wasted 5,000 men without gaining anything. But even after Hara's assassination by an ultranationalist sympathizer, he left them with one final indignity. He'd already dispatched a representative to the Washington Naval Conference. In an agreement meant to stop a naval arms race, Japan agreed to limit its navy to a size that Japanese admirals considered insufficient to defend Japan and its colonies. Sure, it was true that China was so divided by warlords at the time, it couldn't mount a naval threat. But the United States had several colonies and naval bases in the Central and Western Pacific. Though that wasn't their biggest worry. It was actually Soviet Russia that scared the ultranationalists most. It was big, powerful, and in one place, only 28 miles from the Japanese home islands. Plus, Russia posed an ideological threat, while Japan had already suppressed the Japanese Communist Party and driven it underground around the turn of the century. Ultranationalists always feared it would rise again, especially after
Obviously, classic hatred of the left seems to happen everywhere, doesn't it? Seems to happen everywhere.
1923, when a communism-influenced student tried to assassinate Crown Prince Hirohito. Revolution, it seemed, was in the air. In 1918, riots...
Yeah, you're 100% London. The U.S. was the one who came up with the idea of the League of Nations, and then we ended up not joining it because of pushback. Internal pushback, for sure. Well, Woodrow Wilson was kind of upset about that. It was his idea, but then the Congress refused. Death died today. Correct. You may have phrased that better than me. Death died today. Straw manning is when you misrepresent the argument of your opponent and argue against that misrepresentation. That is correct. That's a much better way of phrasing it. Death died today. Pizza. It reminds me of Jojo Rabbit. You're a 10-year-old kid who wants to dress up in a costume and wants to be part of a club. One of my favorite movies, folks. Pizza. You're absolutely after my heart there. I recommend everyone watch Jojo Rabbit. Luke, sounds like the Italian mafia. Right. Yeah, that's for sure. Death died today. I may have done a horrible example. You're right, Death died today. That would be, would that be whataboutery? Yeah, that is true. Another way to, constructing an alternative target that only seems to be involved. Correct, like a scarecrow, right? Okay, exactly, Robert, scarecrow ideology, right? Okay, red herring is similar, but attacks the idea of individuals instead of the other. Correct, Marcus. The USSR had everyone clutching their wallets. Yeah, okay, and their pearls. Okay, exactly. Yes.
Over the price of rice had exploded across the country, leading to popular violence, labor strikes, and even the bombing of police stations. Plus, the Siberian intervention made things worse, as the government bought stocks of rice to supply its troops.
Hi, we're Charity Water. If we lost you at Charity, we get it. Give us a moment to change your mind. At Charity
You're
Water,
right,
we're known
Luke.
for telling great stories.
And then,
We're also not party to the International Criminal Court, so that's fun.
1923, the Great Kanto earthquake wrecked both Yokohama and Tokyo. This necessitated a massive rebuilding effort that sucked up government funds, while meanwhile, inflation was squeezing the urban class. And that economic difficulty and the dissent it caused helped promote liberal opposition parties like the Kensakai, which won enough seats in 1924 to create a hung parliament and a three-party ruling coalition with the Sayukai. But given how much they had to compromise, the Kensakai's reform plan had to stay moderate. They passed universal male suffrage in 1925, hoping to move the country away from the oligarchs, and passed some economic bills. Yet under pressure from their allies, that same year, they also passed the Public Security Prevention Law. This allowed the government to jail anyone for 10 years if they formed or joined an association aimed to alter the Kokutai, the national body with the emperor at its head, or act against private property. Now, it was clearly aimed.
Oh, that's an interesting ad there. Act against private property. Going back to what Pizza said. No, it's like the rich do lots to control things. It does, doesn't it, London? It absolutely does. Okay, that's fair. That's fair from Phil. I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that. My condolences to you and your family. I went to download Discord, but my phone doesn't have enough room since I also content create on YouTube and TikTok. LOL. Also, I'm going to be busy. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Trump failed. That's fine.
At communists and socialists, but considering its vague language could come to be used on anyone.
You're right, Robert.
But while they had to compromise in the diet, the Kensakai could push a more liberal platform in foreign relations. As foreign minister, the liberal Kijuro Shidehara defined Japanese diplomacy in the 1920s, pursuing amicable relations with Britain and the United States, and non-intervention in China. When trouble occurred, he usually evacuated Japanese citizens rather than sending troops. Even as Chinese nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek, who the ultra-nationalists considered a Russian puppet, consolidated control in China, Shidehara stayed out of it. He refused to join with allied nations in threatening retaliation when Chiang's forces attacked several embassies. But Shidehara's hesitation to use troops, and the government cutting the army by 4 divisions, angered both the military and the public. Some ultranationalist and junior military.
Yes, Trump failed. This is a video on Japanese imperialism, the rise of fascist Japan at World War II, right before World War II. Yeah. So I think this might be at this point we're actually in the early 20th century. This is like the 1920s, 1910s.
Military officers even started to go as far as saying parliamentary government was un-Japanese. And then financial panic hit. After the Great Kanto earthquake, the government had offered earthquake bonds to the big banks at a massively discounted rate. The idea being they could lend money to help with the rebuilding. But then by 1927, Japan was in an economic slowdown, and the government floated, making those bonds come due. The result was financial crisis. Citizens made...
By the way, Trump failed. If you're willing to at some point send me your YouTube channel and TikTok and stuff, I'd be willing, depending on what you do and stuff, it might be different from what I do. We could do a collaboration, just something to think about.
A run on banks, withdrawing their money. Smaller banks collapsed overnight, leaving the market controlled by the big Zaibatsu corporations, many of which had political or family links to members of the Kensakai. Shidehara, for example, was married to a daughter of the man who founded Mitsubishi. It was not a good look, and the prime minister was forced to resign. His Sayukai successor, a general, lost no time in rolling back the tide of liberalism. Within a year, he'd used the Public Security Preservation Law to arrest thousands of known and suspected communists across Japan, and planned for a more aggressive interventionist stance in China. It was a new era, quite literally, because the next year, a new emperor, Hirohito, came to the throne, beginning the Showa period, and radicals in the Imperial Japanese Army would start taking matters into their own hands.
Okay, so we're to chapter 3. So we kind of have a setup here. You can see very similar sort of things going on in Japan during economic crisis and things like that we saw in places like Germany and the United States, with a very strongly added military element. The military had a lot more influence, and so now we're going to get to sort of the impetus for Japanese empire, et cetera. Okay. Am I missing any things here, folks? For anyone who's watching, at the top of the chats here, I pinned a post that if you want to join our Discord, I highly recommend it. We have a great community going on there. You can hit the Discord link. Also, if you want to help support me, I'm trying to be able to do this full time. You can click the link that says buy me a coffee, and you can buy me a coffee, or I guess send me some money to help me do this full time. And you could also, we have one super chat going. If we get one super chat of $2 or more, I'll put on the Jester hat. All right, let's continue. Also, folks, if you want to become a member, you get a cute little Jester hat next to your name, like Trump Failed has here. Also, like London has. You also get access to a bunch of little emojis, and you can do it for as little as only 99 cents a month. So something to consider. All right, let's continue.
Manchuria, June 4th, 1928, 5:20 a.m. A train speeds through the darkness in the last few minutes before the dawn. Inside sits Chinese warlord Zhang Zolin, a former bandit. He is master of Manchuria, and until last month, the dictator of the Republic of China. But he's running now, ousted when the nationalist generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and his northern expansion forced him out of the capital. Humbled, he returns to the territory he squeezed to financial collapse, intent on fulfilling his dream of holding Beijing. For the first time in months, Chiang is safe. His men guard this railway, apart from the portion where it crosses the Southern Manchurian Railroad, controlled by his ally Japan, and he can see the crossing bridge quickly approaching. Soon he'll be in his capital and plotting his comeback. An explosion on the tracks rips the train car nearly in half. Two of Chiang's generals die in front of him, and he himself is mortally wounded. The grisly work of a bomb planted by his allies in the Japanese army. Now, you might have noticed for a series on Japanese militarism, so far we've mostly talked about civilian politics. And there's a good reason for that. Because to understand how the tail started to wag the dog in Japanese government, we first have to really understand the dog. And while we spent last episode talking about political parties and factionalism, today we're going to be talking about more factionalism. Because every
Oh, sorry, real fast. I'm just going to read some of these here. Doug on the left, did you ever check out Google? Oh, I forgot to, Doug, but thank you. I saw you posted that on Discord. I will do that, okay? Free money, not a ton, but it adds up. Thank you, Doug. I will do that. Trump failed, no problem. I'll send the links when I get a chance. Fair warning, I'm a very shit post, edgelord, meme lord, controversial. Hey, I like controversial stuff. Yeah, so that's great. Trump failed. I'll take a look into it. Robert McGarry, that narration was epic, right? That they do really great work on this channel, and I highly recommend people go support this channel. It's called Extra History, for anyone who's interested.
Organization we discuss in this series, the military included, was just a Russian doll of factions. For example, the Japanese Army and Navy had fundamentally different versions of territorial expansion. The Navy wanted to expand south into China and Southeast Asia as a way to counter a possible naval war with the United States, while the Army, by contrast, thought the key was to dominate Manchuria, which would give it a buffer against both the Soviet Union and the increasingly unified China, and allow Japan to directly extract natural resources it otherwise had to gain through foreign trade. But even within the army, there were also factions.
Oh, okay,
For instance, a radical group known as the Imperial Way faction, mostly made up of junior officers like lieutenants, captains, and colonels from the countryside, preached an abolishment of civilian government and a restoration of the emperor as the sole political power. They wanted Japan to go back to the period of its glory, with a revered emperor and loyal samurai, and without the corruptions of party politics, big corporations, industrialization, and commercialism. Now, if you've seen our other series on the Sengoku Jidai and the end of the samurai, you realize this period never really existed. They were hearkening back to an imaginary past. Their rivals were the Control faction, who wanted to work within the current system, but like the Imperial Way, also saw military expansion into Manchuria and China as the solution to Japan's economic, political, trade, and population difficulties.
Right, Marcus.
But they also believed in more modernization and industry than the Imperial Way did, and largely strived to get Japan in a position to preemptively strike and defeat the Soviet Union. But both of these factions detested civilian government, which they saw as westernized, corrupt, and beholden to the Zaibatsu, the large corporations that backed parties and candidates. However, it should be noted that the control faction also believed the Zaibatsu were a key ingredient in Japan's war machine. Of these groups, a small sub-faction believed that if they could force an international crisis and get the military into combat, then they could take the reins away from the civilian leaders. This, they believed, would serve both country and emperor. And most of those plots centered on an area that was then called Manchuria, a term we're going to use.
So, Luke, I got to tell everyone what Luke is saying here. Luke said, I did a history class that mostly covered the restoration to World War II. I wrote a paper on the labor movement. A lot of people seem to have forgot that, and it because there was a concerted effort in the U.S. to forget solidarity. 100%, okay? There was actually a very strong labor movement in Japan, too. And even after World War II, there was a strong labor movement, but it was pretty quickly crushed with American support. And in the United States too, we have some of the most violent labor histories in the world. I'm not even exaggerating in terms of cracking down on labor movements.
For clarity's sake, but just know that name has some baggage attached to it that we'll definitely discuss in our lies episode. Anyway.
Imagine being able to build anything
London.
just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
In 1905, one of the spoils Japan had acquired during the Russo-Japanese War was the South
As London says here, it's almost like people don't want to work like slaves, right? How odd. One, London, they should know their place, right?
Manchuria Railway, cutting through northeastern China. Control of this railway had given Japan access to the many raw materials it needed to import from China and Mongolia, and the corridor around the rails had been developed heavily by the Zaibatsu, with factories and towns for Japanese workers. Plus, a large Japanese force, the Kwantung Army, guarded these interests against Chinese warlords and local bandits. But the militarist factions wanted more. They wanted all of Manchuria, which is where Chang Zolin comes in. See, the Kwantung Army wanted to split governance of Manchuria with him, but he seemed poised to either open Manchuria to trade with the US and Britain, or else lose control to the Russian-backed Shang, who might set up a Soviet puppet state. So, a group of junior officers decided to assassinate him and either install a more competent warlord or provoke a full Japanese invasion and take direct control. But the plot backfired. They never told their senior officers about it, and the Kwantung Army simply wasn't ready to invade. Plus, when it leaked that the Japanese army officers had planted the bomb, the civilian government was furious, and Japan's image tarnished on the world stage. Then Chang's son came to power, and in retaliation, handed Manchuria to Shang. The military, for their part, stonewalled the Prime Minister's investigation into the explosion. And when the Prime Minister reported this to Emperor Hirohito, a few careless, displeased words from the monarch meant it was the Prime Minister who ended up resigning. The Kwantung Army had, essentially, proved it could act unilaterally and without approval or oversight of the civilian government, and suffer zero consequences. And to Hirohito, who had not actually wanted the Prime Minister to resign, it was a sign that he shouldn't insert.
On a side note, our CIA has a similar issue. It is a lawless organization that oftentimes will occasionally act outside of the dictates of the civilian government in the United States, and it almost always gets away with it. That's why I think we should abolish it and reform it, or either abolish it or reform it pretty majorly. We have to have an intelligence agency. That's just a part of having a modern nation, but we need one that is controlled by the civilians.
Himself into politics. Meanwhile, the economy took a dive. Japan had barely clawed its way out of financial panic when the Great Depression laid it low. The country survived on agricultural and textile exports, particularly silks, and now prices for those goods fell dramatically. So to keep in business, factories tried to make up for this by producing more, leading to an oversupply problem, all while families starved in the countryside. The Liberal Party in power, the Minseto, took deep political damage as well. A successor of the Kensukai, their financial policies only worsened the situation. This in turn radicalized large segments of the population who, primed by school curriculums and military service, bought into arguments that civilian government had failed and been corrupted by the Zaibatsu. The military, voters increasingly thought, was Japan's last pure institution. The Minseto became a further target of...
Now, for those who know about fascism, that is classic fascism, right? The idea that your combat forces are sort of the purest institution. Combat is fundamentally, and violence is like a fundamentally purifying activity. They're the greatest expression of the nation. Okay, that is extremely, extremely fascist, that idea.
Due to its foreign policy. They backed diplomatic engagement with the United States, which had just banned all Asian immigrants angering the Japanese public, along with non-engagement in China. They also cut military budgets. But the last straw was the signing of the London Naval Treaty of 1930, which the Navy claimed undermined Japan's maritime defense and usurped the emperor's power as commander-in-chief. Calls for radical action proliferated, which was increasingly dangerous, as Japan had a long history of authorities excusing political violence if it was spontaneous and the attacker's motives were considered sincere.
Does that sound familiar? Excusing political violence if the attacker's motives were sincere, and in this case, right wing. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
And as we saw with Cheng's assassination, those in power were hesitant to punish bad actors if they claimed patriotic motives or said they acted to protect the emperor and further the national interest. In November of 1930, an ultranationalist belonging to an anti-communist group shot and wounded the Minseto Prime Minister at Tokyo Station, not far from where Hara had been killed. The conservative Sayukai Party then used the wounded Prime Minister's inability to come into the Diet as pretext for claiming he couldn't govern. The Prime Minister died the next year. Then in March of 1931, a group of junior officers called the Cherry Blossom Society, so named because they said the life of a soldier was fleeting like a cherry blossom, tried to spark riots that would instigate martial law, paving the way for a coup, but said riots were badly organized and failed. To avoid repercussions, the general, who they'd planned to make prime minister, hushed the incident up, and again, no one was punished. But that was mere prelude to another plot, a rail bombing, just like back in 1928. September 18th, 1931, South Manchuria Railway. Quietly, the lieutenant lays bundles of blasting powder by the train tracks. The plan, devised by a colonel and lieutenant colonel, is this: blow the railway, attract Chinese troops from a nearby barracks, blame the blast on them, and invade in retaliation. He backs.
It's called a false flag or false flag, okay? False flag. 100%, Marcus. Meanwhile, these corporations loaning out war armaments to the fascist state, the Mitsubishi Zero, 100%. Yeah, the Zero fighter airplane was, in fact, a creation of Mitsubishi. Yeah.
Off.
Which were used on the attack on Pearl Harbor, for example. Yep.
Here's the train coming and detonates. Unaware, the train speeds toward the damaged area of track, hits it, sways, and continues on, never knowing it passed the epicenter of a new and bloody war. The explosives, it turns out, were too far from the tracks to cause much damage. But that doesn't matter, and the charade goes on. The next day, Japanese artillery fires on the Chinese garrison in retaliation, and 500 soldiers cross into Chinese territory. Suddenly, as planned, Japan is at war, and in Tokyo, the military coup will come within weeks.
Okay. So this next section here is called government by assassination. And what I worry about, folks, and especially when we're talking about what happens with Charlie Kirk, right? And again, I'm not a fan of Charlie Kirk here. I'm just saying we want to avoid getting to a point where we do have government by assassination. That happened in ancient Rome. It ended up resulting in an imperial dictatorship, essentially, in Japan as well. Government by assassination is, once you normalize political violence, which we kind of already have here, to be honest, it becomes basically ruled by that, because whoever can kill who the fastest can be in charge, and then they in turn will be killed also. It's a bad cycle.
Manchuria, September 19th, 1931, 11:48 a.m. Tat-tat, rat-tat-tat. The sake is good. The hotel is comfortable. The geisha is dancing. General Tatekawa is enjoying himself. Who knew this last-minute assignment to Manchuria would be so relaxing? Tat-tat, rat-tat-tat, tat-tat, rat-tat-tat. Yesterday, his bosses in the army ministry had found out something was afoot in Manchuria, a plot by insubordinate members of the Kwantung Army to start a war with China. So Tatekawa had been rushed from Tokyo to Kwantung Army headquarters in order to quash it. But when he got there, he told the leaders that his message from Tokyo could wait until tomorrow. After all, Tatekawa himself thought a war with China might not be so bad. Hey, could anyone recommend a good hotel? So he passed out drinking last night and carried on partying this morning. The geisha dances, the shamisen plays. The music nearly covers the sound of gunfire, the sound he's pretending he can't hear. Tat-tat, rat-tat-tat-tat, tat-tat-tat. Japan's civilian government didn't take the Kwantung Army's invasion of Manchuria lying down. In truth, it was more like gradually reclining. The prime minister learned about the troop movements from the newspapers. He didn't know what to tell the ambassadors when they called, and the Kwantung army was not responding to his messages, telling them to stop and asking for updates. And who ordered this anyway? He definitely wasn't going to tell the foreign leaders he couldn't control his own military. He contacted one of the grand men of state, the last of the oligarchs, to try to get him to lobby someone, perhaps the emperor. No response. But this undeclared war was getting bigger. China had 200,000 troops in Manchuria, and the Kwantung army was no match for that. So within days, generals ordered Japanese reinforcements in Korea to cross into Manchuria. Soon the government assented to sending more troops from Japan itself. And there was another problem. The public loved it. War fever entered full swing. People started wearing kimono liners printed with tanks and fighter aircraft, and flocked to cinemas to see newsreels of the combat. As far as the public was concerned, Japan was finally taking an active hand. After all, a lot of
You're right, London. Yeah, with that skit where the plot twists don't stop coming. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right, London. It was like a constant plot twist. Okay, like watching Game of Thrones, but like a real life Game of Thrones. Sounds like the American-Spanish War, except more believable. 100%. And that's kind of what it was. It was a false flag type thing in order to start a war. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Japanese soldiers had died in World War I and the Russo-Japanese War to gain possessions in Manchuria, making it to them a graveyard of heroes. Further propaganda, much of it laid by the military, positioned Manchuria's natural resources as necessary to Japan's economy, though modern scholarship has suggested this was never the case. After all, who do you think was making all those newsreels everyone was watching? Yep. The army. Anyone who stood against the war was punished. Newspapers that criticized the Kwantung army were subject to low sales or boycotts. Politicians took note and felt like they could do nothing. But it wasn't just public opinion they were afraid of. In October of 1931, less than a month into the war, young officers informed their superiors that members of the Cherry Blossom Society had concocted another plot to overthrow the government. They would take command of a group of aircraft and bomb the prime minister's cabinet meeting, decapitating the civilian government. Then, a troop uprising would capture government buildings, and they'd force the emperor, at gunpoint if necessary, to take power. Generals arrested the plotters and gave their ringleader the harsh punishment of 20 days house arrest. Yeah, many other officers got 10 days, while some were merely transferred. It was mostly kept quiet and treated like an internal matter, which is not a big deterrent, right? Well, that,
for example, also pardoning people who do coups and things like that is also not a good deterrent. January 6th
was part of the problem. As we discussed last episode, there was a hesitation to punish these types of actions, partially because this was just a more extreme version of the nationalist message the government itself pushed, but also because these acts were seen as gaikokujo, a sort of patriotic insubordination. An idea that when things are wrong in Japan, idealistic men will sometimes do rash, rebellious, and self-sacrificial things to try to put things right. Like murder a politician or invade a country. And that while these actions were not exactly kosher, they still should be admired. Now at one time, historians tried to explain this reactionary violence, and the public excusing it, entirely through the lens of Japanese culture. But there are other factors. For example, Japan's public education system, where most students dropped off after 6th grade, and even more after 8th. Only a few fully graduated, and even fewer went to college, meaning in the troubled 1920s and 30s, most of the public lacked the tools to understand the complicated web of political, diplomatic, and economic forces now shaping their lives. And in the absence of that understanding, many people turned to conspiracy theories to explain their world, and supported extreme.
Fascinating, right? Fascinating. With a lack of education and a failed education system, and everything going to hell around them, people started turning to conspiracy theories. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Sound familiar? Sound familiar?
Often violent solutions to fix it. February 1932, Tokyo.
Agreed.
This is their motto: one man, one kill. Lay preacher Nishio Inoue teaches an unusual creed. Combining Buddhist thought with Japanese nationalism, he urges the complete overthrow of the modern political and economic order. As a young man, he drifted until ending up in Manchuria, working on the railroad and as a paid informant for the military. There, he says he had mystical...
Right, London, they're creating the hurricanes. It's a Democrat hoax. Yeah, exactly. And things like QAnon, things like, all these conspiracy theories out there that are now mainstream.
Experiences telling him that Japan must be renewed. He's drawn up a list of 20 names: liberal politicians, moderates, heads of corporations. and 20 volunteers, some civilian radicals, others naval officers, come forward to receive their assignments, along with the gift of a Browning automatic pistol. They take a blood oath to fulfill their duty, which is why the press will come to call them the League of Blood. February 9th,
Alan.
a former finance minister and major player in the liberal Minzato party steps out of his car to give a speech at a school. A League member guns him down. March 5th, the director general of Mitsui Bank is walking into the building when a League member draws a pistol and murders him. After their arrests, neither assassin is quiet about who directed them, and Nishio Inoue turns himself into a Tokyo police station 6 days later. But despite his imprisonment, naval officers associated with the group are planning something even bigger. May 15th. In his residence, Prime Minister Inokai Tsuyashi is worried. His predecessor had to resign over a failure to control the military, and though the emperor ordered him to restrain the militarists, nothing Inokai said.
I know this might seem boring, right? And hopefully a lot of you are enjoying this, but I understand it might seem boring. But the point here, right? Do we see how insanely chaotic all this is and confusing it is? Like people assassinating each other in the streets, mass chaos, all this conflict between the military, the civilian government. All this sort of chaos can oftentimes lead to authoritarianism, if not already, right? Sounds like their beer hall pooch. Absolutely. Cahote. Yep. Mm-hmm.
As seems to stop them. Plus, in January, the military had attacked Shanghai, China's largest city, over a deeply shoddy pretext. And when he tried to negotiate a solution with the Chinese, he'd gotten called a traitor for it. Now the Kwantung Army had declared a new Japanese puppet state in Manchuria, Manchukuo, and invited the deposed Chinese emperor to rule it. Inokai refused to recognize its legitimacy. Suddenly, outside the door, there's a scuffle. Shouts. 11 naval officers enter. They're young, no more than 20, and carrying pistols. "If we could just talk," Inokai says, "I could make you understand." The leader raises his gun. Dialogue is useless.
I stopped doing marketing the hard
Oof.
way. Not by
Okay.
hiring someone,
Second.
by building one. All right, so
They
Okay.
open fire. Like Inoue's League of Blood assassins, they're caught immediately. But that's the plan, because both groups will use their own trials as propaganda. It's a media circus.
Right. No, I agree, London. I think this is like super interesting, right? Because I love this stuff.
When the judge tries to decide the case against Inoue and his two assassins based on facts, they whip up a publicity campaign, saying he's secretly a communist sympathizer with anti-Japanese views. Badgered in the press and mentally exhausted, the judge declares himself unfit and gives up the case. The new judge, a right-wing admirer of Inoue, lets him use the trial as a platform to spread his message to all of Japan. He allows...
By the way, folks, same thing happened with Hitler. When he was put on trial for the beer hall pooch, the judge was right-wing. He allowed Hitler to basically speak to the nation without shutting him up, which allowed Hitler to gain national prominence. So if you have a biased right-wing judiciary, you have an issue. Luke, 100%. Thank you. Aileen Cannon, the Trump-appointed judge that has made decisions that are loyalist decisions to back Trump. We have a right-wing stacked judiciary at the moment, okay, because of the work of Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. It is very problematic, okay?
Buddhist clergy allied with Inoue to testify that his actions with the League of Blood were spiritually pure and patriotic. At sentencing, the judge publicly states that he regrets having to give them life in prison and suggests the emperor might give them amnesty. The trial of Inukai's assassins is even more fevered. 110,000 people write or sign letters in their...
Absolutely, Marcus. Disillusioned people with no prospect of a future, angry and resentful, sounds like a recipe for a fascist cocktail. 100%, Marcus, as we've seen in our own country.
their own blood, saying the defendants should be released. 9 young men offer to die instead of the plotters and show their commitment by sending their severed little fingers to the court. The judge,
Jesus
intimidated
Christ.
by what happened at the League of Blood trial, lets the killers expound on their motives. Comments the newspapers then print and disseminate verbatim without comment. In military courts, the officers are charged not with murder, but rebellion. Defense attorneys argue that loyalty to the emperor is the basis of the law, and given their pure motives, to punish them harshly would undermine the emperor and Japanese spirit. A Navy prosecutor isn't buying it. He goes after them hard, argues for the death penalty. After all, he says, motives shouldn't matter. Murder is murder. And if the court doesn't punish these men, it will only encourage more political violence. And he was right. Because the naval courts didn't listen, it gave the assassins only 15 years in prison, and the prosecutor, by contrast, was forced under public pressure to resign from the Navy. It was, as one British reporter said, a case of government by assassination. And it wasn't over, not by a long shot.
Going to get to chapter 5 here. Okay, let me see if we got any message. Any messages here? So, folks, again, forgive me. Yeah, you're right, Luke. The Yakuza often do that too. The pinky. So, folks, if you want to, if we get one super chat of $2 or more, I will put on the Jester hat. You can also support me on buy me a coffee, which is pinned at the top. You can also become a member for as little as 99 cents a month by hitting the join button beneath the video. Highly appreciate your support, and we'll continue this now. Marco Polo. For those that maybe weren't watching previously, this is we are learning about Japanese militarism, the rise of fascism in Japan. Seeing a lot of parallels that are kind of scary. Okay, let's continue.
League of Nations General Assembly, Geneva, Switzerland, February 24th, 1933. Everyone knows this vote will be tense. After the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, the League of Nations had tasked British politician Lord Lytton to investigate the circumstances of what's increasingly become known as the Mukden incident. The Lytton Commission's report ascribes blame on both sides, but it also says that the Kwantung Army had not acted in self-defense and calls the puppet state of Manchukuo illegitimate. Japanese troops should withdraw. Now the League of Nations votes to condemn Japan as the aggressor. 42 votes in favor, 2 opposed. And in response, Japanese Ambassador Matsuoka steps up to the podium. Japan, however, he says, finds it impossible to accept the report conducted by the assembly. He then walks down the aisle and exits the hall, followed by the Japanese delegation. They've just withdrawn from the League of Nations. When Japan quit the League of Nations in 1933, it abandoned the most prominent international organization meant to guard against a new world war. And they weren't the only ones.
Diego.
That November, the new German Chancellor Adolf Hitler held a successful referendum on withdrawing from the League. And in 1937, fascist Italy quit when the League condemned its actions in what is now Ethiopia. In honesty, Japan had long been frustrated with the League, arguing that it treated Asian nations differently from those of Europe or North America. They'd condemned Japanese actions in Manchuria, but happily let Britain and France set up colonial puppet states of their own in the Middle East. But even in direct diplomatic talks, Japanese ambassadors did themselves no favors by hiding the fact that their military was out of control. It saved Japan from looking weak and divided, sure, but as diplomats increasingly made assurances to foreign nations, only to have the military violate them, it made Japan appear untrustworthy and deceptive. The result was that Japan diplomatically isolated itself, removing all leverage on the world stage and leaving the government no tools to enact its foreign policy apart from one: military action. So, bereft of allies, Ambassador Matsuoka pioneered an anti-communist pact with the fascist states of Germany and Italy. Yet despite all that, things in Japan were kinda quiet. For 2 years, not much progressed. There were no domestic or international incidents, and the economy improved, though unrest still simmered. A corruption scandal brought down the prime minister in 1934, leading to further dissatisfaction with civilian rule. And in 1935, a factional dispute between officers at the Imperial Japanese Army Academy formed the prelude of what would come next. It happened like this. When military authorities uncovered a group of young officers plotting a coup at the academy, they expelled them and forced the Inspector General of Military Education, a prominent Imperial Way faction leader, into retirement. Then, when he was replaced by a general who led the rival Control faction, Imperial Way officers took it as evidence that the whole crackdown had been a setup. In retaliation, an Imperial Way officer walked into the general's office and murdered him with a sword.
Hey, this is government by assassination, okay? We just start killing everyone we disagree with, and it's not, it's a mess.
The killer's trial once again inflamed the public and convinced the Imperial Way that it was finally time to move against their enemies. The February 26th incident, Tokyo, 1936, 4 a.m. They called themselves the Righteous Army, gathering in the snowy barracks grounds, showing a postage stamp to indicate they're in on the plot. These are young and excited men. Their plan is to restore the emperor to power. With a rallying cry adapted from the old Meiji Restoration slogan, "Revere the Emperor, destroy the traitors." They assemble, nearly 1,600 strong, and march into the city center. At 5 a.m., they attack multiple targets simultaneously. key buildings, moderate and liberal politicians, and their enemies, the Control faction, especially those who signed the Washington Naval Treaty. They besieged the Prime Minister's residence, shooting it out with police officers. And once through, they murder the Prime Minister and use a photo to confirm their kill. Confirming, of course, that they killed the wrong man. Only days later, they'll learn that their target had escaped and they'd actually killed his brother-in-law. They also storm the finance minister's house and kill him in his bed. They shoot an imperial advisor, a former prime minister, in front of his wife. Then they board a truck and head to the house of the new Inspector General of Military Education, the replacement for the Control faction general murdered in the Military Academy incident, and machine gun him as his young daughter hides behind the table. They ransack a liberal newspaper, seize the Ministry of War, and take control of police headquarters. More assassination squads storm houses, but the occupants manage to slip away, and the group trying to take control of the palace doesn't succeed. The rebels then make their demands known. An Imperial Way-dominated cabinet, a full restoration of imperial power, and their leader, previously forced into retirement, instated as prime minister. But when Emperor Hirohito is informed, he's unequivocal. The plot must be crushed now. For 2 days, there's a flurry of negotiation. The rebels receive statements of support from some.
Emperor Hirohito, by the way, really got away with being a horrible human being during World War II because he was largely excused for enabling a lot of the genocidal violence the Japanese military did. He was never put on trial for a number of reasons, but not a good guy, oftentimes excused in Japanese history books and even American history books, even though he was deeply responsible for a lot of this.
Some ministers, but the winds are changing. The emperor is firm that this must end with force if necessary. By the morning of the 29th, rebels in the capital look out to see themselves surrounded by 20,000 loyalist troops and 40 warships in Tokyo Bay. Airdropped pamphlets blow in the wind, each saying the emperor has ordered them to stand down. Every radio airwave repeats this same message. And an enormous balloon carries
generational fumbles. I love that framing, London.
a banner telling them not to resist. They give up. With the emperor publicly against them, they could not claim to be acting in his interest. It turned out all Hirohito had to do to stop this madness was speak up, a thing he could have done after any of the previous incidents or any that happened afterward. And yet, he didn't. No public trials this time. No soapbox to spread radicalism. The leaders are tried behind closed doors and shot without media present. Imperial Way officers are purged from the army or sent to inglorious far-off postings. But militarism only got stronger. On March 9th, the Prime Minister's cabinet, terrified, disgraced by their inability to prevent the chaos, and unable to function, resigned, which paved the way for a cabinet stacked with former, and for the first time, current military officers. By threatening to resign and not appoint new members, the military could make any prime minister fall. It effectively held veto on all policy, and its hold over the government would only grow stronger. The next year, on July 7th, 1937, Japanese troops stationed outside of Beijing got into a confused nighttime encounter with a Chinese city garrison. Shots were exchanged, and when negotiations failed, both sides called for reinforcements. Tensions mounted. At 4:45 on July 8th, at a place known as Marco Polo Bridge, Chinese units fired on massing Japanese forces for an unknown reason. In response, 5,000 Japanese troops attacked, and the Second Sino-Japanese War had begun. And it wouldn't end until 1945, at which point it had merged with the Second World War and killed around 22 million people. But the Japanese government got a preview of that in 1937, when it began to hear sickening reports of troops carrying out an unprecedented civilian massacre after taking Nanjing. But for the Japanese government, the problems went beyond an increasingly unaccountable military. Because while both military factions had wanted war with China, neither had a strategic plan for how or what to do with it. Their doctrines were ideological positions, not military aims. They had no objective of when to stop, no strategy of how to hold and administer what they seized. The promised resources meant to secure and enrich Japan went right back into the war effort. When Germany invaded France in 1940, Japan scooped up its colony in Indochina. In retaliation, the United States placed an embargo on steel and petroleum, the most necessary raw materials.
Oh, 100% London. I agree. A lot of Japanese history makes sense now with all this shit that was happening. Yeah, it really does. Okay.
In modern war. So then, desperate for war materials, Japan moved on the British and Dutch colonies of Southeast Asia in order to secure their resources. They would supply their war by starting new wars. To cloak the action in idealism, Japan announced it would liberate the nations of Asia from colonialism and lead them in a Greater East Asia.
Japan is going to spread freedom all over Asia, right?
Co-prosperity sphere. In reality, it was a license to replace Western colonialism with their own. In 1940, all political parties dissolved, consolidated into the Imperial Rule Assistance Association as a way to combat factionalism. It officially joined the Axis powers and began working toward a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. Japanese politics, from the village level, were reorganized to support total war. And fearing attack by the United States, while the military was already so tied down, a group of officers began formulating a plan to break America's naval power in the Pacific. Which, of course, is a story so large, it has to be its...
Okay, guys, so that is that's the end of it, okay? So that gets you a nice little intro here to Japanese militarism. Exactly. Well, yeah, liberate them from their corporeal prisons. Yeah, absolutely, Luke. Right. So you can see here. I'm going to put my face back up, folks. A lot of similarities here. Okay. So he goes on, folks. If you want to, they do then if you want to go watch it yourself. Ex London, good question. I'll show you. So if you go to YouTube, I'll actually post a link in chat here. If you all want to watch yourselves the next episodes, it's a different series. This one is only like the intro, and then there's another set that are here. I'll post them. You can go support this channel. So this is the first episode in the lead up to Pearl Harbor part of their series on this. I'll post it in chat there. There it is. If you want to go watch it yourselves to see the Pearl Harbor stuff, it is really good what they do here. But yeah, so that you can see here how like the Japanese military, government by assassination, extreme nationalism, courts that were stacked by conservatives and things like that led to all this, a fascist government fascist takeover in Japan. Very similar to some of the things we see here. For those folks that are now who are watching, if you want to join our Discord, it's linked at the top of the chat. And if you would like to support me, you can buy me a coffee by clicking on that site that I also pinned in chat. Or you can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. And please like the stream if you haven't already. It'll help get more people in here. Yeah. All right. So folks, okay. I thought you'd all find that interesting. I know I found it interesting. I am curious, folks, if you don't mind, for those that are in here, I've been kind of working on what I'm going to be talking about later during the afternoon stream. I was thinking of doing the French and Indian War. But let me ask. I'm going to put I know there's only 15 people in here right now, but I'm going to ask you all a poll here. Who here has heard of Pickawillany? Pickawillany. Okay. I think I'm spelling that right. Who here has heard of Pickawillany? Let me know. Or I should say, have you heard? Okay. So let me know if you have heard of Pickawillany. Don't cheat. Don't look it up. I'm doing this to see if I should talk about it or to see who's learned about it. Have you heard of Pickawillany? So starting a poll. Okay. Just let me know if you have heard of Pickawillany. No. Okay. So most people haven't when I've taught about it in classes before. 100% right now have say no. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, good. Okay. So I think I will then. I'll talk about Pickawillany in the French and Indian War in the afternoon here. Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys. So, all right. Let me see here. We got, how long have I been on for? About an hour and a half. Okay. So we could, what I'm going to do? I'm going to react to one more video here. Just one more video. Yeah, I know. Kash Patel is incompetent, Fox Emblem. I think this is a classic example of fascist regimes putting loyalists in charge who really have no idea what they're doing. Massive decrease in efficiency of government, incompetence in government, 100%. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to find one. Let's watch. I'll react to one video here from Discord. Let's see here what we got. I'll try to find the one that someone, who was it that told me earlier? Oh, I got you. So Alan gave me, well, I kind of want to wait to do that in the afternoon because that looks like a really important one to watch. Here we go. Why are Charlie Kirk's words suddenly off limits? I like the idea of that one. 8 Mansion. Let me see what that one's about here. I'll do French and Indian War, Macy. I absolutely will. Hey, David. How you doing, David? Um, okay, let's see. Okay, we'll watch this. So we'll watch this one. So this is from, I believe, Robert McGarry. Thank you, Robert, for this. This is LBC. I'm not sure if I know who these people are, but it's called Why Are Charlie Kirk's Words Suddenly Off Limits? So let's see what they have to say here. Thank you for this, Robert, for sending this. Let's take a look here. I'm going to make sure it's on 1.25 speed. So let's watch this. Okay. Again, folks that are watching, we have one super chat. If we get one super chat, I'll put on the Jester hat. You can also support me on Buy Me a Coffee, which is linked at the top of the page, or become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Okay. So let's watch this and let's see what he has to say. Oh, sorry guys. You're right. You're right. Thank you. I got to put my face back. You put the screen back up here. There we go. All right, there we go. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right, I'll start it over. Well, we'll continue it.
I got a few messages yesterday complaining that we were playing out clips of what the chap actually said, the self-styled free speech champion. And then I bumped into Ian Dale yesterday evening, and he said, "Oh, you're getting a lot of flack on Twitter." And I said, "Well, what on earth have I done now?" And he said, "Oh, people think that you were wrong to play out clips of Charlie Kirk talking." I'm like, how can anybody be cross that you're playing out? I mean, what would he want?
Yeah.
In the aftermath of his
that's a really
murder?
Good point that he's making.
Would he want his positions, his arguments, his messages to be more widely disseminated than ever before, or would he want people to essentially censor him posthumously? How can it possibly be? I don't know. I gave up trying to work out what passes for the logic in the minds of these kind of people a long time ago.
Oh, David, I love Persona 5. Its spin-offs deal with it heavily. Yes, they absolutely do, David. David, I actually went to your YouTube channel and I looked at some of your content, and I love it. I love the philosophical analysis. Maybe at some point we can talk about it in Discord. I could do some advertising for you or whatever, do some free advertising. But yeah, that I think I would love if you. I don't know if you have talked about that yet, David, on your channel, but that'd be very fascinating. The Japanese militarism stuff. So, folks who just came in here, we just finished watching a video about Japanese militarism. Excellent, David. I would love that also. So we just talked about like the rise of fascism in Japan and Japanese militarism. You can go back if you want to in the video to watch it. But I'm just reacting to this video. So for those that did just get here, I'm trying to do a daily thing now where I stream in the morning and I stream in the afternoon. The morning streams are more casual, more laid back. I don't do an official lesson there. We'll watch some videos, talk a little bit about history and stuff. And then the afternoon ones will contain the official lesson and more sort of serious political discussion and things like that. I mean, we're obviously watching a political video now, but just letting you guys know. And folks, if you'd like to, again, please support me. I'm trying to be able to do this full time. If we get one super chat of $2, I will put on the Jester hat. And if we, excellent, David. I'm excited for that. I really am. For that Persona 5 video essay. Or you can support me on Buy Me a Coffee, okay, which is linked at the top of the chat. We're just watching here a video that Robert sent. Thank you again, Robert, for this. It's called Why Are Charlie Kirk's Words Suddenly Off Limits? So we'll do that now.
Not true, is it? I'll never give up trying to work it out, but I gave up much hope that I would ever succeed. And the other bit that was missing from the analysis, from the entire story, was the definition of who they were. So Donald Trump moved immediately, as Donald Trump will always do, to turn this tragedy into whatever.
Well, and I'm hoping the super chats will pop off in the afternoon. That's for sure. That is for sure.
Would be most to the benefit of Donald Trump. And so he elected to list attacks upon Republican politicians, refer to attacks upon Republican politicians, and completely ignore attacks upon Democrat politicians, many of which have been undertaken by people who were proven to be Donald Trump supporters or Donald Trump admirers, and talked about radical left rhetoric. I heard a lot of talk, I've seen a lot of talk about they. I'll play you a clip in a moment of a Fox News commentator saying they're at war with us. And I genuinely don't know who they are.
David.
And obviously there's a frisson of concern, not necessarily fear, that it just means anybody who keeps telling the truth about these people and this movement. Anybody who, for example, considers it absolutely unconscionable that you could pardon insurrectionists who attacked the Capitol and left and left the police officers traumatized, terrified, and even dead. You know, is that what he means? What is the radical left rhetoric? So there were two things missing from our conversation yesterday, and I answered one of those questions. I now know what he stood for.
I am David. I am absolutely a gamer, David, and I actually might later this evening do a gaming live stream. I was thinking about playing some Dark Souls or something.
And I appreciate some people have been less empathetic than me, if you like. But I don't resile a single scintilla of sympathy and horror at what happened to the guy. I used the word courageous yesterday to describe my reaction to the discovery that he always debated people. I don't know that I would reuse that word today, because I've had a look at some of the clips, I've had a look at some of the debates, and I don't really know how courageous it was. I've also seen quite a lot of clips of him losing, but the criticisms he received. So,
folks, I've actually never seen this channel before, LBC. What does it stand for? I couldn't. Does anyone know? I really like what this guy is saying so far, though. This is good analysis so far here.
I'll tell you why I say that, because I don't think I'm courageous. And what he did essentially was what I do from a very different political position and not on the radio. So if I get the better of somebody, there'll be a long queue of people claiming that I've been condescending or I've bullied them.
David, that's great.
We can't really edit things to make me look better than I actually am, because the whole flipping show is up on YouTube from beginning to end. But I don't want to be yin to his yang, and I'm obviously nowhere near as important on the political stage on either side of the Atlantic. But I don't know that it's courageous to say prove me wrong. I just used the word to describe him in contrast to a lot of people who seem to have similar politics and will never stand up and be counted. So in relative terms, he had more courage than Hank Buncher-Numbers with a bald eagle avatar who spends his life disseminating negativity and bigotry on social media. And I didn't like what I discovered about him. And the more I discovered about him during yesterday's programme, the more troubled I was by
is this English?
The response.
Folks, is this from the UK? Is this a UK channel? I mean, I can hear the accent he has. If someone will let me know.
Lily of Boris Johnson, actually, who talked about all he ever did was say common sense things. And then you read some of the things that he'd actually said, or you listened to some of the things that he'd actually said, and you wondered whether Boris Johnson, the nicest thing you could say about Boris Johnson was that he didn't know. He should have listened to yesterday's show, because he was responding.
Thank you, London. Thank you.
And that, of course, is when I realised why people would get so cross about anybody reading out what he'd said or playing out actual footage of him talking. Imagine that for a moment.
By the way, London, maybe we will do an HO I4. I'm sorry, London. I was forgetting to look at the Twitch stuff, but yeah, you're right. Thank you for that help. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely do that at some point. Okay. Yeah, true, Kimberly. I agree, and I think what this guy is saying. He admits he originally said he was courageous, but now he's like, I don't think so much anymore. Yeah.
Imagine casting yourself as a disciple of somebody you describe as a free speech champion, and then he tragically gets murdered by persons as yet unknown, which is an element of the conversation that we're moving towards. He tragically gets murdered.
Hey, J-Mac, welcome,
and all of the people who consider themselves to be disciples of a free speech champion have hissy fits and conniptions over the words that he spoke, over people playing the words that he spoke.
Yeah, I've noticed that. It annoys me how people will literally just play what Charlie Kirk we'll just play what Charlie. I'm glad you're not the only one on Twitch there now, London. We'll just play what Charlie Kirk says, and then you'll see right wingers and people will be like, "Stop talking bad about him. You know, he's dead." Blah 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 blah. Well, okay, literally, it's just a post what Charlie Kirk said. And if anything, Charlie Kirk was all about spreading the word of what he believes. So what's the issue here? It's like you don't want the truth out there about what Charlie Kirk was saying.
I'm not often completely baffled by bigotry. But I've got to tell you, that one's got me right in the right in the confused zone of my brain. So you don't want me to find out what he stood for?
Oh, Louise, no,
even as I condemn his murder.
I'll take a look at that.
Why don't you want me to find out why don't you want people to know what he stood for? Surely that's a grave disservice to his memory. You think he'd be ashamed of the things that he was recorded saying? You think he'd be ashamed of the positions he adopted? You think he'd be ashamed of the arguments that he made? Or are you ashamed of the fact that you agree with them and therefore you don't want anybody holding up the mirror?
Oh, yeah.
As usual. Generally, when I'm completely baffled by people,
spitting facts.
I realise it is what they see in the mirror that's being held up that they're repelled by, rather than the person actually holding up the mirror. That just becomes a wonderful exercise in projection. So I'm categorically not praising the man, but I am discovering with every passing hour the reality of his opinions, and that then takes us to the reaction. And I've seen actually one right-winger. I'm not familiar with him. I'm not that plugged into American politics. Michael. And I don't know whether he's ignorant of history or whether he's absolutely stupid, but I've seen one right-wing commentator this morning suggesting that this is like the Reichstag fire in Nazi Germany. The Reichstag fire, if you don't know, involved the German parliament building being set on fire by one individual.
Wait, so he's saying there was a right-winger saying this? That's very disturbing.
It's communist. And Hitler used it to claim that this was all part of a massive conspiracy by all the communists, because 1930s Germany could have gone either way. It could have gone far left or far right.
Yeah, it could have.
And Hitler knew that. The biggest threat to him politically was probably from communists.
And remember, folks, what I keep saying, like when you have these crises and things like that, we have two options. We go to the left or we go to the fascists, right? Those are the options we have. You can't stick in the center.
And he therefore lied about it being a massive conspiracy of people and that they had to round up all the communists. And once they started rounding up the communists and closing down democracy and co-opting the judiciary, you know what happened next. So I was a little surprised to see that point being made by somebody who would very much style themselves as on the same side of politics as Donald Trump or indeed Charlie Kirk. I didn't know Charlie Kirk was one of the people that lied about the 2020 election. So, again, I don't know what his position was on the insurrectionists, but pardoning people who've tried to overthrow democracy by using political violence is surely, under any analysis whatsoever, more of a catalyst for political violence than calling people names. And then I've also found myself in the last 24 hours.
So true.
It is now starting my day at like 30 miles an hour instead of 0.
Sorry, Alan has a great... I love this. Alan says, Chuck Schumer said the best way to fight fascism is to pass all their bills and write strongly worded letters. Yeah. Because the Democrats are little bitch babies and don't want to do a damn thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right, J-Mac. There's no real left presence in the USA with any sort of power, which is why we are where we are now. 100%, J-Mac. And the so-called left part, the Liberal Party, the Democrats, are basically conservatives. You're right, J-Mac. We need to rebuild leftist power or left-wing power. I think it was Fox Emblem who said we need to do more community organizing, and also, it's a competitive authoritarian dictatorship. Had to switch to live chat. Do I have the wrong? I might have. I got you, Michael. Yeah. Okay. Alan W. I'm going to ignore your question because I don't know. I think yes. I'll say yes. Yes, I do. Maybe I'll talk about it later on live stream or something. It is it's a complex question, but yeah, I do think we kind of should start a new party, but with caveats. The Overton window has shifted. Absolutely, Mr. Justins. J-Mac, thank you for using the cute little emojis here, folks. By the way, thank you, J-Mac, for helping me do an advertisement. If you subscribe for as little as, or if you become a member for as little as 99 cents a month, you get access to cute little emojis, which you can see here. I will post them in the chat. Ooh, little emojis. Okay. And I will be adding more over time. So there you go. Okay. You can also support me by sending me a super chat. We haven't gotten any today, but that's okay. But if we do get one, I will put on the Jester hat. And if you can also send me buy me a coffee, which is pinned at the top of the chat. Okay. All right. Let's continue.
Reading people who used to claim that calling people names is just hurty words. Even Farage is in the Daily Mail today complaining about people being called names.
To see you, Dubois.
And yet these are the guys who 10
We need more progressives because we're going way too far right. 100%, Kimberly. Welcome back, Dubois. I'm very glad to see you here. Yeah, they're not even left. You're right. They're absolutely not left, Kimberly. They're you know, they're moderate conservatives who claim to be liberal.
Minutes ago, we're telling us that our free speech was under. I mean, I'm just really confused. Until you start wondering whether it is, as always, all about the race.
Bruh moment. Thank you very much. Thank you, bruh moment. Okay, putting on the Jester hat. Oh, folks, thank you very much. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, bruh moment. As always, a great contributor here. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I like me too. I like the energy of Jasmine Crockett too, Kimberly Jean. So we got that hat, folks. I will. I'm not gonna. Well, collar. We'll do the collar too now. If we get one more, I'll put on the collar. All right, but admittedly, folks, I am not going to be on for terribly longer because I've been streaming for a while now, and of course I will come back on later in the day as I normally do for the more official stream here. But this is sort of our sort of a casual morning stream here.
Often the way the transgender people being used as camouflage in the first instance to go all in on the racism, allowing public discourse to be vile again. In the context of transgender people, you're never going to get that genie back in the bottle, and all of the people whose bigotries extend far beyond one issue have been filling their boots ever since. I want you to listen to something. First of all, I want you to listen to this. This is a political commentator from the Republican Party. I think he used to work for George Bush. Well, he definitely worked for one of the George Bushes. I just can't completely remember which one. This guy got sacked.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful action.
Macy, yeah, is there a can you did you post some reactions, Macy, watching the new iHip together? It's 15 minutes. Yeah, we can do that. We can do it in the afternoon stream for sure. We still have a few minutes left on this one, or we can watch it now. I'll see here.
That is a guy called Matthew Dowd speaking on MSNBC.
Matthew Dowd.
He got fired for those words shortly afterwards.
Yep, he did.
This is a guy called Jesse Waters.
Again, legacy news sources, very sluggish in their combating of fascism and things like that.
Speaking on Fox News in more or less the same window of time, and both in response to this horrible murder.
Correct.
Trump gets hit in the ear. Charlie gets shot dead. They came after Kavanaugh with a rifle to his neighborhood. They went after Musk's cars. They just shot 2 Jews outside the embassy. Think about it. Scalise got shot.
Alan, as always, spitting facts here. We will never have a true democracy until we get money out of politics. Okay? 1,000%. Okay? We need the money out of the politics.
Barely survived. It's happening. We got trans shooters. We got riots in L.A. They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're just going to have to ask ourselves. Now, Charlie would want us to put as much pressure on these people as possible. Dana nailed it. This is unacceptable and has to stop. And it has to stop now.
Yeah, David, by the way, thank you, David, for reminding me. A great organization is called Wolfpack. It is an organization advocating for a constitutional amendment to remove money from politics. I highly, highly recommend, if people want to do some sort of nonprofit support or some sort of contribution to a good organization, Wolfpack is one of those organizations. David mentioning Wolfpack, I believe it was founded by Cenk Uygur, a very good organization trying to get money out of politics.
And everybody's accountable, and we're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what.
Yep.
The politicians, the media, and all these rats out there. This can never happen again.
Oh, okay. Dehumanizing language. Nazis did this all the time, calling Jewish people rats. We talked about how in Rwanda, the Tutsis were referred to as Inyenzi, which means cockroaches. This is very common dehumanizing language used by the right wing. Really disgusting stuff. Slaves in chattel slaves in America were basically viewed as livestock and treated like farm animals, and in lots of the documents they were referred to as livestock. So again, dehumanizing language here. Okay,
it ends now. Greg's right again.
Yeah,
this is a turning point, and we know which direction we're going.
He's still got a job, and you know I share his condemnation of political violence. But who are they? Who is this homogenous group of people that are all responsible for the actions of those individuals? I mean, he did actually go further.
We're angry.
Okay, so David, I will correct myself here. I don't want people to think I said that the Wolfpack was founded by Cenk Uygur, and it was, but they're not related to the TYT really. Okay, they're not connected to the Young Turks. I just want to make that clear for people who aren't fans of the Young Turks. I didn't mean to make it sound like there was a deep connection there. There isn't. It is an independent organization, but it's doing very good work. Okay, very good work.
And we're resolute. And we're going to avenge Charlie's death in the way Charlie would want it to be avenged.
Are you talking about avenging now? And how can you be opposed to political violence but supportive of a man who pardoned the January the 6th insurrectionists?
Yeah,
you remember that footage? You saw it. You watched it.
James O'Brien.
Donald Trump lost an election, and his supporters attacked the Capitol and attacked the public servants working there and bayed for the blood of the actual vice president. I still don't know enough about Charlie Kirk to know how he would feel about the coverage of his murder.
You're totally right, J-Mac.
I'm certain that
Yeah, sorry, folks, to keep pausing it, but you're totally right, J-Mac. Cenk is not the greatest anymore. I'd be sick if that happened. Absolutely. 100% London. The money should be supplied by the government equally. Yeah, I agree. I think we should have publicly funded elections. In the way he would want it to be avenged sounds threatening. It absolutely is threatening. It is stochastic terrorism, calling for violence without calling for violence, for sure. Though some of them are directly calling for violence. No, you're actually right, J-Mac. I want to stream longer, and I will probably start doing that. My issue right now is that for folks that are watching here, okay, how do I phrase? I don't know how do I phrase this. Okay, I am not currently making. I don't know if I want to say this on live stream. I'm not currently making enough money, just live streaming to be able to do it for 8 or so hours a day. Because I have to take some time to create that. Yeah, I know, J-Mac, but I do want to do that. I want to stream for longer. So I need to spend some time during the day actually cutting up videos and things like that to put those on YouTube to make extra income. But eventually I will stream for much longer. Okay. Let me put it that way. Okay. I don't want to sound like I'm, yeah. Okay. Anyways, but we're continuing.
You wouldn't want people to be complaining about hearing his words being repeated and disseminated. And well, I don't know. I mean, listen, if you're gonna, you talk about all of the people that Waters guy just talked about, and it's right to do so, but you then have to talk about Melissa Hortman and her husband, targeted in their homes, killed by a Trump supporter. It's a matter of record. The man charged with the attempted assassination of Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro in April, a Trump supporter. 4 Democratic elected officials targeted in New Mexico in 2022. The man who tried to kidnap the Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and actually assaulted her husband, Paul. That's something that Donald Trump Jr. made jokes about.
Why can't we have someone was making jokes American commentators who say these things, right?
In public life, a really senior Democrat was making jokes about Charlie Kirk's murder now. What do you think would happen to them? But Donald Trump's son made jokes about attempted kidnap and attack upon senior Democrats. Everybody who wanted to hang Mike Pence on January the 6th, 2021 was a Trump supporter. By definition, if you were there, you weren't just a Trump supporter, you were also spreading lies. Buying lies, disseminating lies, or to be generous, believing lies.
You're right, they did, Luke.
And the list goes on. And the list should be married to the other list. They should all be on the same list. Gabby Giffords shot in the head, a Democrat. We speak about they, all of these Democrats. Is there some unidentified homogenous group, the radical left? Who are you talking about? People who support political violence. There are two types of people. People who support political violence.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is...
Yeah, you're totally right, Fox.
Actually, there are 3 types of people. There are people who undertake political violence, and they are the worst. All right? Then there are the people who support political violence, and they are the second worst. And then there are the people who abhor and condemn political violence, and they are all of us. Why is that suddenly complicated in the context of this story? Why is it suddenly tribal?
So to answer you, J-Mac says the issue with the information on the shooter is vague. He disagreed with Charlie. Okay, what did he disagree with him on? I know some kid that worked with him gave an interview and said he was against Charlie and Trump. It's all very confusing. Yeah, we don't really know yet, J-Mac. There's a lot of speculation out there. Yeah, I don't know why it's also vague still. I've heard conflicting reports. Yeah, I don't know.
Why is it political or footballified? Here are the people who undertake political violence, up to and including whoever turns out to have shot Charlie Kirk and all of the people, for example, who attacked the Capitol in 2021. Here are the people who support political violence, whoever is doing it. And here are the people who don't. That's a scary division, right? That's a really scary division. Because you kind of end up being told, in this context, in this sort of crucible of very carefully cultivated hatred, that anybody who disagrees with you is responsible for the political violence enacted against the people who agree with you. Anybody who disagrees with you, it's a bit like what they tried to do with the Palestinian peace marches. If you're protesting, if you're demonstrating...
Right, Kimberly, I thought Jan 6 was a moment of love. Something else, folks, that is not being talked about as much. You know that school shooting that took place the day that Charlie Kirk was shot? They now released what the ideology of that shooter was. Does anyone know? Neo-Nazi. So the kid, who was a child, by the way, who went to that school in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, and shot, a bunch of students the same day Charlie Kirk was killed, what had been in a neo-Nazi network and was doing neo-Nazi inspired violence. Yeah, I mean, you notice, folks, every news site I've seen has that way down on the page, okay, way down on the page in terms of what is important to talk about. So, I mean, again, we are surrounded by right-wing violence all the time, okay, regardless of what the ideology. There you go, J-Mac. It's almost like some lives are worth more than others. Yep, you're right, Mr. Justins. He was a Nick Fuentes enjoyer. Again, regardless of what the ideology of Kirk's assassin was, surrounded by right-wing violence, okay? Disgusting.
Demonstrating solidarity with innocent people being killed in Gaza, then you must support Hamas. If you disagree with Donald Trump, then you must support the people who tried to kill him. If you disagree with some of the racist conspiracy theories that Charlie Kirk adhered to, notably the Great Replacement theory, if you disagree with that, then you must somehow endorse his murder. I mean...
Yeah,
is that what they're saying?
Remember how I think I said, it was on a Discord or some other place, I said how it drives me crazy how a lot of these arguments sound a lot like if you're against the Israeli genocide, you're against, you're anti-Semitic, okay? Like, that's what a lot of the arguments I hear around the Kirk thing sound like, right? If you criticize Charlie Kirk, suddenly you are, pro killing, okay? Like pro his death, pro assassination or whatever. There is a difference. There is a difference.
Is that what it is? It's actually a lot simpler than it originally looks. It's all about controlling the narrative. And the narrative is that everybody who disagrees with us, just as we saw with the Reichstag fire, everybody who disagrees with us deserves the violence that we are pretending to condemn and abhor.
Last night, I had no one working on marketing.
Oh, this might be the end of it, folks.
Copywriter, SEO expert.
Yeah, you're right, Alan. You're right. Okay, that was really good. Thank you for sending that, Robert. That was a fantastic video. I'm gonna, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna subscribe to this guy's channel. That's really great. Okay. Okay, so folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get off now for a bit. I will come back on in my normal later time, probably around 2:30 or 3. I'll come back on. Well, what time is it? It's almost 2. Yeah, we'll do like 2:30 or 3. And we'll have a longer stream. And I might even play a little bit of a video game at the end of the stream. So I'll stream for longer. And we'll have our little lesson at the beginning and things like that. So please come back for that. And we typically will have a larger audience then too. So, all right, guys, let me see. I'm going to go to my face here. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any chats. Okay, while the West is mourning Charlie, hundreds. Louise, thank you for becoming a member, Louise. Thank you very much. Make a super chat goal to game at the end. Oh, that's a good idea, Alan. I will do that. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the advice, Alan. Okay, West is mourning Charlie. Hundreds continue to be unalive daily in Gaza. Yeah. Yep. It's really gross. Or at least something that would be synonymous. Okay, Fox Emblem here. Oh yeah, Mr. Justin, excuse me. It blows my mind you would kill someone because they aren't Nazi enough for you. People need to take that in. Yeah, I mean, it's gross. Okay, Fox Emblem, the rhetorical violence boomerang is what I call it, and it's what King among others in the civil rights movement called it. Yep. Or at least something that would be synonymous with the term violence begets violence, and this includes rhetorical violence. You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, in our society, bye-bye, Robert, bye-bye. In our society, we are typically okay with like violent words, right? Or words that promote violence, especially if they're indirectly promote violence, which can cause a cycle of violence. Okay, it's unfortunate. It's a big issue. Let me see here. Okay. They like to conflate things to be that. Authoritarian societies like to do this. If you are not with us, you are against us. 100%, Luke. 100%. Yeah, Luke, and the U.S. has done that too, for sure. You're an anti-American. 100%, Luke. That language, that demonizing language. And okay, folks. All right. So I'm going to do my last little bit here. Please join me again later. Well, happy Saturday, by the way, everyone. Okay. I'll come back on 2:30 to 3. Okay. We'll likely have a larger audience. All right, folks. Okay. All right. You all know what's coming. You all know what's coming. First of all, free Palestine. Please, free Palestine. Free Palestine. Second of all here, never stop resisting. The easiest way to resist is to think for yourselves. The easiest way to resist is to think for yourselves. That includes when you watch me. I am not perfect. I am a human. I get things wrong. Look what other people are saying. Don't get caught in an information bubble. The easiest way to resist is to think for yourselves. Secondly here, we are living in a fascist moment in this country, not only here, but around the world. Fascism thrives in an environment where people have lost faith in their democratic institutions, so they turn towards more radical means to fix it. We need major reforms in this country, not only here, but in other countries around the world. You cannot stand in the center. If you stand in the center, the fascists will walk all over you. You'll be like a slug on the ground to be trod over. Do not let them do that to you. We need major reforms. Please keep resisting. On the wall behind me is a sword. The name of that sword is Chainbreaker. Chainbreaker has been passed on my family and is rumored to have been responsible for the death of 7 slave owners. Why do I have it back there? I have it back there to remind everyone that our ancestors made major sacrifices, including sometimes their lives, for some of the things we have today. And some of those gains that we've made through their sacrifice are being rolled back. We cannot let their sacrifice go to waste, people. Please, please, please do not let their sacrifice go to waste. And always, always, always fight for a better future. And on that note, I will see you all later in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Okay. Have a great Saturday, etc. I love you all. Good night, good morning, good afternoon from anywhere you are in the world. Goodbye.